So we continue to hear from those residents, and we want to make sure that we're responding to you in a timely manner and making sure that we're answering your questions on why certain things may be flagged and not others. Um, let's see here. A lot of you, if you're longtime residents, have heard about Oakland's CORE program. CORE was something that was based around community preparedness and resiliency. We want to make sure that residents, whether it's an earthquake, a fire, or any sort of natural and man-made disaster, that they're able to respond quickly to that, and again get back to living a normal life after that potential tragedy. So CORE was in Oakland for several years, following the earthquake and the fire in 89 and 91. Unfortunately, due to staff transitions and other things, it kind of fell apart over maybe 2.5 years ago. We are really happy that we have taken a new look at that. We have taken a look at the old version of CORE, taken guidance from residents, taken best practices from around the country, and we are excited to announce that CORE will be back in place. It's frankly already started. The advisory board that was on the previous CORE board is actively playing a role in our emergency management process. Our emergency management team is now up to a lean and mean 4-person staff, but they are very excited to get that going. January, they will begin online classes again, and then pending the new county health orders, we're hoping to have CORE programs in person again, with physical distancing in place likely by March of 2021. What other questions have I gotten recently? A lot of people have asked about some of the recent precautions we've taken up in the hills. You're mostly in the East Oakland section of the hills versus a lot of the area that gets a lot of attention, as you know, is up by Grizzly Peak. Grizzly Peak is one of the epicenters, so to speak, of the high fire severity zone. It's where the wind gets up the highest. So when we have wildfire weather with high temperatures and low humidity, wind is the big wild card. If we have high winds during those two conditions, we can expect very extreme fire weather, which then could be very bad for the entire region. We've been fortunate to avoid that through a lot of different precautions we've taken around inspections of public and private parcels. But again, a lot of it comes back to the responsibility that residents have taken to prevent fire in the first place and just making good decisions. This year on 4th of July, we closed Grizzly Peak. We had good success preventing fires over all that long weekend. We'd like to potentially continue that. What does that mean for East Oakland and Skyline? It means that we want to work with you. We want to work with residents to see what you're looking for. What are the hot spots that you feel are of greatest concern? Some of the things we've did last week along Grizzly Peak were in partnership with UC Berkeley, East Bay Regional Parks, and the City of Berkeley's fire department and police department. And they identified about 9 scenic lookout hotspots, which have, maybe due to COVID, maybe due to weather, I'm not sure what, but a lot of people are congregating, upwards of 60 and 70 cars sometimes at various lookout points. And it's a beautiful view, and we don't want to dismiss that, but some of the hazardous activity that's happening up there related to drinking, drug use, dangerous driving, illegal parking, and firework activity has made it so that those jurisdictions came together and said, we can't allow this. There's too many risks in play, and we want to unite kind of behind a single vision to address this. So over the last week, we put logs up which prevented people from going into those lookout points. That will likely last the entirety of fire season, and then we'll reassess from there. I know that many residents in other parts of Oakland, particularly along the ridgeline in East Oakland, Skyline and Keller, as we talked about earlier today among this team, and I'm sure you're talking about it in your own communities, figuring out what are the spots that you're seeing the most activity that could potentially create either illegal activity that could end in a violent crime or an injury, or could potentially cause a wildfire. So I'm excited that we have established this team that's even on this call right now, who you'll hear from, but we have a good relationship with the District 6 council member, and would like to cultivate one with residents as well that can address some of those initial concerns, both in the short and the long term. Obviously, fire season will go probably through November. this year. So we have some immediate concerns we want to alleviate. However, what are some of the year-round issues that you all want to bring forward that we can begin to act on, not just around fire season, but also throughout the year? Because as you all know, the fire engines respond to lots of incidents, lots of injuries, lots of medical issues. So whether that's dangerous corridors where cars are parked very narrow, we've done a lot of those safe street projects where we've addressed areas that people are parking on both sides of the street, not leaving enough room for emergency vehicles to get through. That would be challenging in an evacuation scenario. So those are the kind of the things we can do year round too, that maybe won't get as much media attention, but I think generate a lot of goodwill in the community among the fire service and the law enforcement, as well as the community groups. So we want to be a partner, and I don't want to go too long because I want to leave room for questions. But lastly, I'll close with this. This week we are announcing a new contract with a platform called Zone Haven. Zone Haven is going to work with every fire service and law enforcement agency in the county, which will be a tool we will use, which everybody will be living in a zone. And when your zone is told to prepare for evacuation or to evacuate, you will get an emergency notification. So we are identifying the best tools to get an opt-in system, sort of like AC Alert, where you get push notifications, except this one you won't really have an option. It'll be almost like an Amber Alert, where you will know your zone, you will know where you live, and when you get an alert from Zone Haven or the Oakland Fire Department or the County of Alameda to evacuate in the event of a major emergency, you won't have to wait for Channel 5 or Channel 2 to tell you. You can just rely on getting a text message that says Zone B4, it's time to go. And so this is what we hear most from residents. Where do I go? When do I go? And how should I prepare? So we're hoping that Zone Haven can get a really robust launch in the next couple of weeks, and we expect this to be ready to roll out for next fire season. So I'll leave it with that, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, thanks so much for that, Michael. I think the overview, knowing how pressing sort of fire season, fire safety, preparedness are, I think that's extremely helpful in those updates. I know that there are a couple of questions in the chat, one of which I saw asked, if a neighbor has a questionable fire situation, how can we find out if they corrected the issue? And then there's another issue related to neighbor situation regarding a leaking septic system. And that one we'll wait to address because that's not necessarily fire.
The first one, my understanding, and I can check with this tonight or first thing in the morning and get back to you all, regarding how do I know if my neighbor has mitigated a compliance issue? I think that's the question, correct, Councilmember?
Yes.
I believe on Acela, you can simply type in the address, and I believe it's sort of an open source where you can determine any address, because it's not really a property record as much as it is just a public record. So I will confirm that tonight or first thing in the morning, but I believe you can almost type in any address on Acela if you are logged in and registered for that system, and determine the status of a compliance matter for that parcel. Again, I will check on that tonight. I've only been asked, how to do it from the person who lives in that residence, but I believe you can do it for any residence as long as they're in the high fires. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't think everyone's as familiar with Acela, so maybe you can give a high level, really quick description, and then if one of our sort of maybe Juan, if you can put the Acela website in here, the link, that would be great.
Yeah, so Acela was a way to, I guess, to catch up to the modern era. It was time consuming and not really current to do an inspection and then send someone a printed snail mail envelope with a summary of their issues. We still do that. However, now we go into the system and can look immediately on someone's address whether they have compliance issues and whether they've been mitigated. And the person can see what we flagged as a compliance issue, and it can all be done online. And then you can just have a one-to-one interaction with the inspector that's working on that issue. It's just an efficiency and expediency issue that we instituted a few years ago, and it's not perfect. I mean, we've definitely had our fair share of criticisms of Acela, but it is better because right after the inspection's done, the pictures are uploaded of maybe you had a tree hanging over wires, or maybe you had another issue that would have been a hazard in an incident of a fire or could cause a fire. So it basically was visual evidence of what the issue was, and then you just knew how to correct it more quickly.
Thanks, Michael. So the looks like the website has been added here. Thanks, Ron. And Ron also acknowledged that anyone can look up any address to see the status of inspections. Great. I also see a comment that folks acknowledging it's great to have CORE back, the emergency preparedness system training and support. And then I'm not sure if I see any other fire-related questions here. If anyone does have a question for Michael, feel free to raise your hand. I see Karsten Hazlett. We'll go ahead and unmute you. You go ahead and unmute so that you could ask a question.
Okay. Hi, Lauren. Thanks.
Hey there.
Yeah, this is just a problem that's specific to me. And literally, I guess I'm the only one that this affects. But there is a fire hydrant on Skyline Boulevard on the northbound lane between Kathy and, shoot, I'm sorry, I can't think of the other street. Oh, no. Anyway, near Kathy Lane, that is exposed to traffic. There is no barrier, there's no curb, and this fire hydrant has been hit 3 times in the last 5 years. And every time it happens, it floods my house. And
Wow.
I've asked repeatedly. I worked with the prior city council person, Desley Brooks, on this, and I'm now in talks with Rowena, who's one of the representatives for Loren there in his office. But it just happened 2 times within the space of 3 months. And, it brings mud, debris, and rock. I'm still cleaning up the mess. This last happened on September 2nd. And I'm retired now, and I'm not enjoying the extra expense. I have a swimming pool, and I know people don't feel sorry for people in the hills because they've got money or something. But, I'm just middle class. I'm not rich. And the pool got filled with mud again, and it's taken me this long so that it's just cloudy. I could have emptied the pool and paid somebody $1,000 to clean it. I have a pool service to do that. But I thought, no, I'll just do it myself. Well, it's still a mess. And I just can't do this. I have to put out sandbags when it comes, and I usually don't even, I'm not aware of it. It's in the middle of the night because somebody who's drunk or on drugs,
Yep.
or it's super foggy.
So if I can just jump in, absolutely something that we don't want to happen. It's happened 3 times. It's something that we need to address. Michael, is that something that you think you could take back? I'm not sure if Rowena's already pulled you into this, but to me, it seems reasonable that there would be some sort of protection given the frequency of this occurrence.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those that's going to cross over departments too. While we benefit from the hydrants in terms of responding to fires and incidents where we use it, we don't fill it or really maintain it. That would be a public works matter, but I can absolutely work with public works to wrap our arms around that one. So I'm sorry, sir. That's the terrible issue that you've had to deal with. That sounds miserable on a lot of fronts, and it's something that should have been addressed sooner.
So glad to hear that Rowena's on top of that. We will follow up an action item. And I think we have Public Works Director, Interim Director David Ferguson on the line. I'm not sure if, and I know we'll get to you a little bit later. I'm not sure, Mr. Ferguson, Director Ferguson, if you have anything to add to that.
At this point, I don't. I'm not familiar with the area.
Okay.
And when Michael, I guess we'll have to talk because I'm not clear on what you mean by wrapping, hydrant, or maintaining. That's what I heard.
So we will make sure to
Okay.
follow up on that.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up, Karsten.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing any other hands at this point. Maybe, oh, I see Karen, you're waving. Is that because you have something to, go ahead and unmute yourself. Karen Khan.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi there.
Hi. So I have a number of questions. You're familiar with all the issues that are happening up in Skyline Hillcrest Estates. We are getting together a group. I don't know if you're familiar with SCUFs.
No.
Okay. So this was a group that was formed in 2019. And it stands for Skyline Citizens United for Safety, SCUFs. And it was started at a time when there was a homeless encampment, which was a drug dealer's paradise, living among the redwoods in someone's backyard on Skyline Boulevard near where I live. And we as a group were able to convince the city of Oakland to take some action and move people out. But it took a lot of marshaling of community support, and it took Desley Brooks' involvement. The Oakland Police Department was involved, and the HOA as well. Ultimately, happily ending with the city of Oakland bringing up a couple of dumpsters and just cleaning out the property. I mean, it really was literally a homeless encampment, and what they look like is what it looked like. So I'm trying to revive this group to deal with the issues that we're having up here. It's a little bit like living in the Wild West. And the gun activity nightly, frequently, you know, in the middle of the night, in the middle of the morning, 3, 4 o'clock, it doesn't AM, it doesn't really matter what time of day it is. There's just a lot of guns going off. And a few days ago, a car drove by that many people saw with some people in it, and they were just shooting a gun out the window. You know, there were like 8 shots fired right by where I live, right by Handsome and Skyline. So I know that, you know, you sent me a letter which was very reassuring in terms of, you know, some kind of community, well, in terms of the local council and parks, regional parks, and I guess the city of Berkeley getting together and trying to get on top of the fireworks and sideshow activities and so forth. And it has stopped, at least where I live. I don't hear those sideshows anymore, but I do hear the gunshots. I don't hear fireworks. So I have a number of questions. One is, are there, I mean, we don't have a police presence up here. I rarely see a police car. And when I do see a police car, it's like, I used to feel when I lived on the East Coast and I saw a deer suddenly, you know, which was a very infrequent sighting. And I go, oh, look, a police car. Yeah. So it's not very reassuring that we don't have police up here. And so at the very least, I'm wondering if there are video cameras, and if not, whether they can be installed.
Okay, so police presence, video cameras, the potential use of those. Other topics, I think after you finish, I'm going to ask Captain Angelica Mendoza from OPD to kind of respond to some of what she's heard, and then I can also add in. Is it
okay?
Other
so
than
I have some more things. I think it's important to encourage people in real time to communicate with the police department, because people up here, they just talk to each other and they go, oh, I just heard, you know, guns, and, you know, maybe it sounded like it was just a few blocks away. And no one has any assurance that if they call the police department, someone will come out and resolve the issue or investigate the issue. So that apathy needs to be dispelled. I mean, we need to have people who are actively involved in stopping the crime where we live. And I'm not sure how to go about doing that, but I do feel that there's a shared burden on the city of Oakland and you as the District 6 representative and also the people who live in this community. Additionally, I think it would be good to have some criteria when we hear gunshot activity. When do we call 911? Because there's been discussion, there have been discussions about, oh, just call non-emergency. The city of Oakland police are too busy. But then the police tell us to call 911. So I think there should be some criteria that people understand when there is a public safety hazard. And I guess that's, and then I'd like to know what's being done. I know that parts of Grizzly Peak Boulevard have been cordoned off, or there are barriers so that people can't stop and have parties and set off fireworks and so forth. And that's been a pretty recent implementing of safety guards. And is there something like that happening in our community, large and small? It extends beyond Hillcrest Estates. So those are the main things I wanted to bring up.
Thanks so much for that, Karen. So what I heard was police presence, how and that can be increased, whether or not cameras can be used as an alternate to help support some of the response, the active engagement of police, sort of when to call 911 versus the non-emergency number. And then I think the two things that you mentioned that are on a lot of people's minds based on the chat are sideshows and increased gunfire. So Captain Mendoza, do you mind jumping in to kind of address some of what we just heard? And I can, jump in if there's anything more District 6 specific.
Good evening, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to the group. I know DC Armstrong really wanted to attend, but he had a conflict in schedule as he's attending the police commission meeting. And I just want to make a slight correction because I am the commander of Area 4.
Oh, sorry.
And Captain Lewis is Area 5. I command beats 23 to 25, so I do have partial of the hills, and Keller and Skyline do lie within my police geographical area. But I do have intimate knowledge about what's going on in Captain Lewis's area as well, as we work very close together, and oftentimes our teams are deployed together due to the level of violence that we have in East Oakland. So I just wanted to share some things and hopefully answer some of those questions and be responsive to some of the action that we have already taken. Due to your council member, his office has continued to communicate and coordinate with the OPD with your concerns. So your council member is working very hard and making sure that he messages the community concerns to the OPD. And as a response of a lot of your questions, I'm just going to start with the sideshow. This year, Oakland did see sideshow activity on the rise early on, 2 months before the typical summertime months that we usually would see it. Therefore, the chief decided to implement the citywide deployment so we can have additional resources and deployments every weekend in East Oakland, primarily where all of the sideshow occurs, specifically in Skyline. We do have some areas that do affect Keller and Skyline, and also 15000 Skyline Boulevard, and that is an open East Bay regional parking lot where a lot of individuals like to congregate, loiter, enjoy the views, but also to do activity that is not very pleasant. And unfortunately, sometimes that turns into criminal activity and some gunfire, in which we've had maybe 2 or 3 incidents that have occurred and have been considered for other criminal, they have been, I guess what I want to say is they've gone, we've taken those individuals into custody, and they are right now going through criminal court cases for the crimes that they committed up in that area. So they have been captured. We do know who those individuals were, and the cases were followed up on. Now back to the sideshow. It's unfortunate that they have found these two areas primarily because of the lack of police and in that area, and also the open roadway and being high up in the hill. So Keller and Skyline, you have a great big intersection where vehicles tend to be able to do what we call the donuts. And you guys see the scarring that's left on the roadway, right? All of the black tires. And then they go up that way to go to the Skyline, to the point where they loiter, congregate, park, and then they start to play loud music. And during the July season, you guys probably heard a lot of fireworks occurring in that area as well. So as a response of that, the department did deploy out citywide response, which meant that everybody in the police department that was available had to rotate throughout the weekend so we could have sufficient amount of teams. And you will hear quite often Argus, which is our police helicopter in the air. And we unfortunately have to adhere to a lot of the complaints that we also get from neighbors, particularly in the Hills area, just for hearing the amount of times that Argus is responding or circling in the area. The reason for that is that we need Argus up in the air, because when we're down on the flatlands, like more below, where we have a lot of gun crime and critical incidents happening, we need to be able to have Argus fly up when we're getting calls of gunshots or we're getting calls of sideshow activities, so that my commanders are able to understand the level of and the amount of individuals that are congregating at that location, so we could best deploy units there very quickly and tactically, because they do have several ways to get out of an area very quickly. And when we're trying to deploy and keep our resources in areas that we need critical response, the helicopter is very useful and helpful for that purpose. So I do apologize if that has been a nuisance, because I know the department has received several complaints about the helicopter being very loud and circling in neighborhoods. But that is the intent and purpose, and also to mitigate some of our risk in having to pursue criminals and suspects through the streets of Oakland and having them collide with citizens. So we use the helicopter so they could have an overview and actually just be able to advise where that subject vehicle has parked or entering in a more safer roadway. Now, in regards to the gunfire that you've heard, I don't necessarily think, in looking at our data, that aside from the 3 incidents a couple months that I spoke to you about that we followed up on, that they are occurring primarily in that area. And Ms. Khan, I think I'm speaking to that incident where you witnessed that individual shooting outside of the car. That's one that we did follow up on, and we did take individuals into custody in that case. But the other ones, I think they're coming from beat 35, a little bit below that area, and they're so loud, and we have an increase, unfortunately, during this time, during COVID times, we have seen an increase in our gun crime. And just to give you an example, we have gone operational and partnered with various other law enforcement entities, such as the U.S. Marshals, the ATF, to be able to combat a lot of the gun crimes and under COVID conditions and take those individuals into custody. I mean, just up to date, 2020, the OPD alone has recovered 946 firearms. We've taken 946 firearms off of city streets, and 50 of those were assault rifles. So that gives you just kind of a visual of the gun power that's out there, and that we are recovering from the streets. Now, when the concern came that you don't always see patrol officers in that area, and you don't have a lot of officers patrolling the area, you do have an officer assigned between all 3 watches to be 25 and 35. But when there are emergency critical situations, they have to come off of the hill to cover officers when we have 3 homicides occurring simultaneously in the lower portion of beats 25 and 35 in areas 4 and 5. And then it leaves 25 a little bit open. However, understanding that, I have directed the B25 officer to ensure that when they are just completing police reports, or there's a slower period of time where they don't have to necessarily go to any 911 response calls, priority 1 calls that we call them, that I would like for them to be on beat 25 and to stay at that location and just deploy from that area. So understanding that, you know, you don't see them, you do have assigned beat officers, and you also have a community resource officer, and that's Officer Resendez, who responds to beat 25, and you have a neighborhood service coordinator and an NCPC board that does meet, and I know that they are due to have another meeting in November. So I can have Councilmember Loren Taylor distribute the NCPC's name, Arena Richards, and provide the schedule to those meetings. And that's where we have consistent dialogue, and we share a lot of crime stats, and the neighborhood provides us information as well. And we can give you updates on arrests and things that we've done in the area. And I know that Officer Resendez has been working on Skyline and Keller and working with East Bay Park and East Bay Regional Parks to ensure that we get signage around the areas that I spoke of, to see if we could deter some of that loitering and that illegal parking. We also connected with the City of Oakland parking enforcement to ensure that they take frequent routes up to that location, and also ticket and tow away vehicles that are just there parked and illegally parked. So he's already made those connects. He's also connected with Mr. Joe Wang from the Department of Transportation to see if there's anything that we can do to collaborate together with the community on beats 25, just to try to see if there's anything about that area that we can do environmental changes. What's designs, putting barriers up, putting some street bumps in that area so the traffic could slow down, because there is something there, and I believe maybe extra lighting that is making it so attractive for individuals to want to just go to that area. So even to break up some of the width of that roadway, so they are not able to do those donuts so freely. But Mr. Wang has agreed to do an assessment of the area and to really make those assessments and return back to his office to see what he can do to assist with that type of resource. Another thing, I did solicit some assistance from our Special Operations Division, which basically oversees our traffic division. Unfortunately, we only have 1 squad of motorcycle officers, the traffic officers, who are able to pay particular attention and cite those individuals who are speeding. And that was one of the other concerns that the Skyline Keller community had. And so you will see a LiDAR, what we call basically, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the speed guns, but we call it the LiDAR now. That will be deployed out tomorrow. And I'm not going to give you the specific times because I don't want any of you to avoid it. Just kidding. But you will see them out there tomorrow. And they are going to be out there for the purpose just to make sure that nobody's speeding in the area. Now, I'm saying that because when we get up there with those resources, we also are, we get a lot of complaints from the same community, because people do end up getting tickets, and they end up being very mad at us because they want us to be down away from Skyline and the hills to get the bad people, as they tell us, and not be in the hills. But if they're speeding in the hills and we're up there for that purpose to attend to complaints, you know, that's what the officers are there for. They're attending to the community complaints. So I just want everybody here to be aware of that. We really don't tell, you know, the operations what time they're going to be out there, but I will let you know that they will be out there tomorrow. And you'll see the motorcycle enforcement in that area just to attend to a lot of complaints that we got about the speeding. And also our sideshow teams are still out. We anticipate them to still be deployed out citywide until the end of maybe rain season. Again, we started early. We're out still a little bit longer, where historically we've only been deployed out during summertime. But because of the amount of violence and also the amount of sideshow activity that we continue to see, the chief made the decision to just deploy out throughout the rest of the year, hopefully, or just before Christmas is over. I mean, before Christmas gets here. Another thing that has been done, and we have coordinated with engineering, is OakDOT has completed an engineering and traffic survey for us for Keller Ave and Surrey, from Surrey Lane to Fontaine, in attempts to see if it does qualify for us to put those speed bumps, because that's the area I think that the traffic division has received continuous complaints about. And then within the next 10 days, you should see what we call a speed trailer. I'm sure that many of you have seen those throughout Oakland. It just generally tells you your speed and to slow down and what the speed limit is. That is mostly used just to calm traffic, to allow people an opportunity to see that, you know, they're driving a little bit fast and that we would like their speeds to slow down. It usually helps a lot. I know it doesn't seem like it does, but it really, really does help a lot of individuals deter from speeding. As far as gun crimes on B25, I looked in the last 30 days, we do not have any shot spotter calls in that area. I know a question was that when you hear gunfire, should you call non-emergency or emergency? That is a 911 call. So please don't confuse that. You hear gunfire or what you believe to be gunfire, please call 911. And it's best that you call it the minute that you do hear it. I would not like for you to, you know, go and confront anybody. Just be a good witness. I don't want anybody to be harmed. I don't want anybody to put their lives in danger. That's what we're here for. My officers are very quick to respond to gunfire calls, and we will get units up there. So do not ever believe that we are not attentive to those calls. You call, we will get units up there if we have to get them from across the city, meaning from North Oakland. If we have to cross them over from North Oakland to get to East Oakland to help us, we will do that. So there will always be somebody to attend to those 911 calls, especially gunfire calls. And it's very imperative that we do receive that information, because that is how the area commanders are able to deploy out their units, and also able to bring it to the chief and council that we need additional resources to attend to the level of violence that we're seeing in the time. But if it goes unheard or unseen, I'm unable to look at my data, and I'm unable to see where I need my police services to be in the times that these things are occurring. In order to do that, we do have ShotSpotter, but there are areas in Oakland that are not covered by ShotSpotter. Unfortunately, there's some speakers throughout Oakland that do have the speakers that are able to give us the ShotSpotter activity and allow us to know when gunfire is happening right away or within the vicinity where the gunfire is coming from. Unfortunately, the majority of the speakers in ShotSpotter are down below where we have the most violent crime. And I'm sure everybody here understands that, because it is a lot of gun activity. We do, however, have speakers for ShotSpotter in those main corridors where we know that there's a lot of traffic going up, and the escape routes most likely if somebody's going to fire rounds. We do not reveal where those speakers are for safety reasons, and we do not want them to be vandalized. So that is why it does not, you know, come out as a report as to where those ShotSpotter speakers are. But the majority, I will say, and will let you know, that they're more below MacArthur. And let's see, did I cover anything? We have seen a decrease in robberies, armed robberies, so that's a plus for us. And we continue to see that number decrease. And I know in Area 4, we have additional resources to address that, and also the gun crime. So please know, currently We are in a citywide response with our special resource teams. All the areas have collaborated at the direction of the chief of police to address our violence and our gun crimes. And we have a lot of gang activity, a lot of conflicts going on right now between the groups. And therefore, we had to be very strategic so we could have a 24-hour turnaround operationally to have enough staff to attend to the street level violence that's occurring in Oakland. And it has proven to be very significant in its results to be able to lower the crime that we're seeing in Oakland. So none of this is as being said to you to scare you in any way. So I really, really hope that I'm not scaring anybody. I just want you to know that we are here for you. We are aware of the issues that are occurring, and we are here and open to address anything else additionally that needs to be addressed. But my team is always available to address the needs of Beats 25 and of course Captain Lewis's team for Beat 35 up in the hills as well. And we do have a team of community resource officers and those sergeants and lieutenants that oversee those teams. And of course, you could always go through your office of your council member. He'll make sure to get it to us and the right person. And let's see, anything else I got?
So,
I'm sorry.
I did want to just acknowledge some of the items in the chat. I think there are some folks who identified areas where there is perceived a lot of speeding. And so wanted to just acknowledge that if there are hot spots of speeding, if you guys send that to our office, we can sort of summarize. We're keeping a list to make sure that we feed to Captain Mendoza and the speed enforcement team. Also, it looks like there's some statement that sideshows also occur at Handsome and Skyline. There was a question about seeing police respond to a sideshow, and someone stated that they didn't see the police actually engage. So they came, but they didn't engage. So maybe Captain Mendoza, you can describe why that might have occurred. And then you hit on ShotSpotter. I think the reality, yeah. So you hit on the ShotSpotter piece. And then there was a question relative to an update on a shooting at Merritt College. So maybe I'll stop there.
Yes, good questions. So definitely we are aware of Skyline and Handsome. That falls under the command of Area 5, which is Captain Lewis. But yes, we work very closely together, and those are two areas where our sideshow teams are aware of, and they do respond to those areas. Now, for the matter of units responding to the location and there being sideshow activity, there are different strategies that we use. There is a lot of violence that is associated with sideshows. They take shots at police officers if we enter a crowd. So there's a different strategic ways that we disperse them. And then if there's a need for an enforcement stop, we take them off in a different area of the city. So we will follow them. We will have the helicopter follow them, or we'll have additional units pick up on the vehicle. We also have different strategies where we will capture. So it's really good for you to capture video of the vehicle. If you see a car, for instance, and I know I had a neighbor, a community member from your area, actually take photographs of a car that was doing what we call donuts, speeding, erratic driving. And we captured the driver, and we captured the driver's license, and we do later on go and make warrants and do a search warrant and take their vehicles. And if we get all of that information, that is all that the judge requires us to do. Although that enforcement action might not occur at that minute because of a variety of different safety issues, we do follow up on that, and we do make late arrests later at a later time. But we need that type of information and critical evidence to be able to support that arrest and that warrant to later take their vehicle.
Captain Mendoza, if I can, related to that, Jamie B left a note. He actually posted a video and said that in the video you see a Toyota drive by and then fire a gun. And the question is, what should I do with these videos when this happens?
Wow. So that is why it's important for us to really connect with the community resource officer for the area. because that would be the direct person that you connect that video to, and they would get it to the right person. You could email that to me if you have that right now, and I will make sure we follow up on that. But I will make sure that your community has the community resource officers' names. I'll ask the neighborhood service coordinator to provide Councilmember Loren Taylor with a revised, updated list, and hopefully to get those meetings out. So if anybody wants to join, but that's the type of information that should go to your community resource officer, and they will get it to the right people to enforce those type of videos. But that's what we need. Again, I don't want nobody to put themselves in an unsafe situation, but if you have surveillance video in your home that you capture that later and it gives you good video, we would love to have that video, especially if it shows the driver and it shows who's driving that car and the license plate and a description and the activity that they're doing. So when they're actually doing the donuts in the area, that's very helpful. I got lost with some other questions that you might have asked me, but I know it was that question, and what was the other one?
No problem. You know what? Maybe
It was,
Juan, you're managing, or Lena, you're managing.
yes, it was the follow-up about the shooting at Merritt College.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yes, so that is in area 4, and I'll give you a little bit to what that pertains to. And I know Merritt College has a really good relationship with OPD as their security. There is security on that lot. During COVID times right now, we're seeing a lot of promoters doing all these what we call underground parties, where people are gathering, or they're renting like warehouses and then advertising on social media for these young people to come and join them. And they have this party. I think people are just bored, and these promoters are looking to gain financially by promoting during the COVID time. Well, this scenario was the information that we received was that there was a last minute social media display of an event, what they called a rave. I don't know if any of you are familiar with what they call raves, but pretty much they're gatherings where they like to just listen to music and have parties. And so on the lot that was somewhere adjacent to that area, it was determined that this type of event was occurring, and the individual was waiting at that location on the property of Merritt, and there was a bus, a party bus, that was picking up the group of people and then taking them to this unknown location to try to keep themselves off of police radar or any community neighborhoods off of from calling the police, because we didn't receive not one call from anybody in that neighborhood about any activity or any party that was going on. So it is right now being under investigated, and there's no concern as far as is it any danger, going on within that neighborhood at Merritt College. I think this was a one-time event. We are aware of it now, and we are looking into all of the promoters' advertisement and following up on that investigation, and also going after the promoter for actually promoting that rave during COVID conditions.
Great, thanks. I'm not looking at the participants list. Does anyone have their hand raised with a question? I see Nancy Safford with a physical hand raised. Nancy, go ahead. And I was advised that I wasn't doing a good job timekeeping, so we are going to keep comments/questions down to, let's say, 1.5 minutes, and I'll interrupt if needed.
Okay, I don't think I need 1.5 minutes. I just want to respond to Captain Mendoza's comment. We have private security within Crown Ridge, which is adjacent to Merritt, and our private security reports to us that there are gatherings at Merritt College 2 to 3 times a week. And as you know, the Sheriff's Department does not patrol Merritt on the weekends, and the sheriff's contract is ending with Peralta December 31st. Additionally, they do have private security, but they are rarely at the campus.
Okay, I would love to get that information from you. I'm going to give you my email, and if we could connect, because I do want to be very responsive to those parties that are occurring or said to be occurring at Panera College. So my email is amendoza, AMENDOZA, @oaklandcalca.gov. And if you could just give me your information, we will dialogue offline, and I will definitely ensure that that is followed up on by our teams.
And it's in the chat as well. I just dropped it in the chat.
Oh, good. Perfect.
Okay.
Great. Thanks everyone there. Captain Mendoza, appreciate the thorough responses, the partnership, and really not just with our office and being responsive, but as you described, exploring how to partner with the other departments, Department of Transportation, Public Works, et cetera, in terms of balancing the enforcement with the sort of design to make our communities safer. I want to, let's see, we're at 7:03 and we've got, we have Public Works on the line, and there have been a few questions related to illegal dumping, maintenance of parks, park maintenance, the trees along Skyline. And then there's also a question around septic tanks and sewer connections in that piece. So Assistant Director Ferguson, do you mind sort of jumping in and answering a few of what the questions that we've seen so far and heard?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I tried to post up my photo. I don't think you want to see my bedroom, but I couldn't do a background. So let's try to install a background photo, but I apologize. But anyway, thank you for having me. I had, you did send me, Councilmember Taylor, a couple questions in advance. One that I don't think you mentioned that I have is about a potential adoptive spot on Keller. So I'll try to run through these in the order that I have them. The first one is about the removal of dead trees along the median on Skyline that can potentially fall down or obstruct traffic and possibly cause an injury or an accident. So we last year, the first fiscal year of this budget cycle, council appropriated some funding for us to deal with the trees on Skyline Boulevard. As a result, last year and part of this year, we were able to remove about 100 trees along Skyline, some in the median, and I believe some were on the shoulder. And that was all the funding we've had. We don't have existing resources just to go out and start removing or pruning trees. Our tree program consists of dealing with priority 1 tree requests, which is all we have the capacity to deal with. And those are trees that may be in danger of falling or pose a safety hazard. We continuously deal with those. We don't have a pruning program. We don't even have a stump removal program. You may notice stumps throughout the city. We've got over 1,000 of them now, as I speak, that need to be stumped. And when we have time, we'll try to send out a crew to deal with a few of them during the week at a time. So our tree program is, like I say, it's kind of a reactive. And currently we do have received a grant, CAL FIRE grant, to conduct a street tree inventory, which is underway now. It should be completed, I believe, early spring. And as part of that grant, we also have a urban forestry master plan that will be developed, and that's going to take us out, probably 1.5 years out. It's going to take a lot more work, but that plan will also include some recommendations about how we can better maintain our tree canopy. So I know it's not a whole lot of good news, but again, we have about 8 We have 14 tree trimmer positions and about 8 of them are filled right now. We're continuously in a recruitment mode for many of our positions in public works, and this is one of them. This may have a little different look from if you go back to 2008, 2010, when we had, actually it was 2008, we had massive layoffs. Well, trees and park services was cut over 50%. So we're still trying to rebound from that, trying to recover from that. Measure Q is certainly going to help on the park maintenance side. For the tree side, we're still hoping that as part of the street tree inventory, knowing exactly how many trees we have on streets, parks, and libraries and other city properties. This does not include open space. Having that information and the recommendations from the Urban Forest Master Plan will help us make better decisions. The council make better decisions about how we can best maintain our canopy. Are there any questions?
Maybe you can move on to a few of the other questions and then
Okay.
and then
I'll go next to the sewer lateral replacement for septic tanks. So septic tanks, they're also known as on-site wastewater treatment systems. They're regulated by the county Environmental Health Department. Our department, Public Works, we do provide inspections for private sewer lateral permits for homeowners who are currently connected to the system, city sanitary sewer system. We've partnered with the health department, environmental health, I'm sorry, to facilitate sewer extensions to septic communities initiated by homeowners. Of course, they're funded privately, but currently the city doesn't really have a program to augment that. However, we still continue to coordinate with homeowners on how to pursue abandonment of their tanks that are the septic tanks that are permitted through the environmental health. And the next one regarding illegal dumping.
I think, so for that one, I know one of the questions that was raised specifically is there's a neighbor that's having challenges with another neighbor who's isn't necessarily meeting inspection, et cetera. And I guess for that specific situation, I think when it comes to the aspect of holding a property owner accountable when something isn't going right, it sounds as though we are trying to work with the county in order to kind of figure out who's actually going to drive that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that specific situation.
So, Councilman Taylor, I'm not. I did see it in the chat, and thanks for bringing that up. So I don't have any information on that. I don't know. I know it said that they have been noticed, but nothing. The city's been unresponsive. So I'd have to follow up on that, but I would need an address.
Okay. Yep. So we'll make sure to connect you. I know that Rowena from my team has been following up on that, and the last I heard is that there's a back and forth between the city and the county in terms of who's actually jurisdiction it is to actually do enforcement. And so we'll follow up there, but that was the word I got, I think, yesterday.
Okay.
To that. And if you can help alleviate any of that or clarify anything, great.
Sure thing.
Let's see. So there are, let's see, other questions for you to hit. I know that there are some open questions that we haven't addressed, but I want you to have a chance to answer the ones that we have teed up already.
Okay. The next one, addressing illegal dumping and litter on Skyline. So we have Skyline is on our garbage blitz crews. It's a assigned area. They're actually a proactive crew. They don't receive service requests. They just go out and hit the major arterials within the city and pick up whatever, they're supposed to pick up whatever they see. Skyline is one of the streets that they do patrol. Since March, from March to about July, we were only working at about 33% capacity due to COVID-19. Some of our staff, for personal health reasons and other reasons, were not available to work. So during that time, we had about 33% of our staff working, and we gradually brought it back up right after July to full capacity. With the extent that the positions we had were filled, we still have a vacancy rate. There are illegal dumping crews. We just interviewed for 13 public works maintenance workers last week, and we'll be sending conditional offer letters to them. And that's out of, I think, about 40 people that just focus on illegal dumping. 13 of the positions were vacant. You know, we hope to see some improvement there in terms of our response, including the rapid response team. Also, for years, at least over a year, we've had what we call the SWAP, the Sheriff Work Alternative Program. These are you know, citizens like you and I think, who receive traffic fines and don't want to pay them or can't afford to pay them, and they do community service. We had received anywhere from 20 to 30 on the weekends and about 10 to 15 during the week. And they were assigned to areas like Skyline, because you know how long Skyline is, to do some cleanup. The SWAT program was suspended in March, early March, due to COVID-19. So we don't have the SWAT program anymore. And there was another group, Center for Employment Opportunities, also had a crew who helped us out with litter, illegal dumping, and weed abatement. So for the last 8 months, we haven't had that service augment our crews. So hopefully they'll come back soon. We really, it really made a difference.
And
the other,
Director Ferguson, I know that we were able to push for on the council to get some additional dollars budgeted for illegal dumping, addressing illegal dumping, abandoned vehicles, which I think is less, and may not be as much of an issue that in these neighborhoods. And for the budget year with the revise, I'm not sure if there's any update there. Also, I believe there are some CARES Act dollars that were allocated to help address that as well.
So yes, regarding the budget, the annual budget, we did receive funding to add another, call them garbage blitz crew, but it's a proactive crew of 4 individuals, 2 each in a packer truck, a mini packer, and a 25 cubic yard packer. That 4-person crew was part of the 13 that we just are sent conditional offer letters to.
Gotcha.
So hopefully they'll be starting, I'm going to say mid-November. It takes a couple of weeks to go through background and get some of the other paperwork completed to get them onboarded. So yes, we did receive some funds. In terms of the CARE Act funds, Public Works did receive funding. We did receive $400,000 for work that was connected, had a nexus to COVID-19. And the projects that are related have to do with some of the homeless encampments, cleanup and shelter for homeless encampments, as well as feeding some of our vulnerable communities, some of the elderly and unsheltered. So that is where that $400,000 went.
Thanks for that update.
Sure. And just the other thing is quickly about Adopt a Spot. So Mimi Chan, I believe she's on here. Hi, Mimi. I can't see you, can't see me, but thank you very much. And also Sandra Bethune, thank you very much. And there's probably others who've been doing volunteer work that I don't know about, because that's out of our stewardship program, staff who manage that program. They know who you are. I just know of a few. I just want to thank you for your efforts, because, you know, obviously we couldn't do it without you all. And we really appreciate that. But if there are opportunities to volunteer or adopt a spot, and if you're interested, you need that information, I can, I guess the best way to get,
I think we can get it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try to upload a link in the chat. If not, I'll make sure I get it to the council member's office so they can share it.
Great. Also added to the chat was information about how to report illegal dumping.
Sure, thank you. Yes.
311 and the phone number to call as well.
So we do have a call center, or Oak 311. They do the intake for all of the calls regarding public works. Many of the city calls, with the exception of public safety, I believe. And that number is 615-5566. You can also, if you're familiar with the C-Click Fix app or the Oak 311 app, that's another way to report a problem. For example, if you're on Skyline and you see a pile of trash, you can take a photo, you can send that to Oak 311, and they will forward that to the appropriate supervisor. What's helpful about that is our crews are able to deploy the right resources when we have a photo. Sometimes we get descriptions, they may not actually fit. We may not send the right equipment to handle the problem. So if you're able to do that, you can download that app, and that would be very helpful. The reason it's important to call Oak 311 and not a supervisor or a manager or anyone else is because they enter our information into our work management system, and we can track it. You get a tracking number, service request number. You'll get, I believe you get an email when it's closed out. It's much easier for us to be able to track that information through Oak 311.
Great. Thanks, David.
Sure.
So given where we are at time, we're at 7:20. I noticed one other comment that was in the chat related to the Slow Streets program. Someone from Department of Transportation wasn't able to make it, but we did get some answers in advance. So for those who aren't familiar, the Slow Streets program was where there were barricades brought in to help reduce traffic on certain streets in order to make it a residential sort of traffic only. And that is intended to allow folks to be able to walk on their streets, not have the level of traffic, allow folks to get out more space out in this sort of reality of social distancing. That was a sort of a pilot program that was initiated and it's still going on, but the response that we got back is that there are no new streets being added. The last installations were in July for a certain period of learning evaluation that is occurring. The program is expected to relaunch in early 2021, and they're revising the approach on how to get those slow streets up and running. Part of what is going to be new is that they will be partnering with local organizations, neighborhood groups, and residents who want the space, will activate it and use it. And so making sure that we're aware of it, that there's a desire and a need, we are keeping a running list of those in District 6 who are requesting and wanting a slow street in their neighborhood. Also, there is a link that we can provide for the evaluation of the program that has occurred, that came out in September. And so that you can sort of see that, and then also the link to the Slow Streets program. So wanted to acknowledge that question in the chat. There are also some, there were a couple questions in the chat, and since we had 10 minutes till the schedule time, I want to jump to those that are probably more appropriate for me to respond to and answer. And they're related to some of the policy areas that we are involved in from my office. One is the aspect of reimagining public safety. We've talked about the challenges that exist relative to limited resources that exist for police. We know that we've come off of a summer of not just COVID, but intense sort of reawakening relative to racial justice aspects around police in the community. There have been calls to defund police. There are a lot of sort of questions and challenges relative to how can we improve efficiency, effectiveness of our public safety system, which includes police, but is not only police. And so for those, just a little bit of background. with the calls for defunding in light of George Floyd murder, Breonna Taylor, and others at the beginning of the summer, there was a big push for sort of drastic reductions in OPD by some in our community. I, along with a few other council members, really, I would say, pushed back on doing things drastically without a thoughtful, intentional, engaging process in terms of how we can actually achieve the both and of improving public safety while looking at how we can, focus police resources on those areas that they're most experienced, trained for, most appropriate to respond to, and allowing freeing up of their time in the areas that are least appropriate. And so what we on the council did was establish a task force to reimagine public safety. That task force, the goal is to come together, have representational folks from across the district, from across the city, from different lived experiences, to all weigh in on how we can improve our public safety system. The way that we're going about that is answering 5 key questions. The first question is, what are some of the things that our police department are doing now that they should no longer do or they should do less of? And one of the things that has been acknowledged is that whether you ask police, whether you ask those in the community, on regardless, there are some areas where there's clear agreement and alignment, like mental health responding to mental health crises, like homeless encampments, then managing homeless encampments. There are some opportunities that are easier to identify where we could potentially bring alternatives in. And so we want to first address that, in addition to the question of where should police enhance what they're doing, or what should they continue to do? What are those things that we don't think that there are reasonable replacements for? Obviously, gun violence, violent crime, those areas are those where I think there's pretty much uniform agreement that is directly within that scope. And so that's a conversation we're having. The second question is around, for those areas where we think police should do less, what are reasonable alternatives to replace the police response? And so the reality is, if we're getting 2,000 calls a day for service, there's an individual person on the other side of that line that is asking for help or support. We can't take away without making sure that there is an adequate, equivalent, and hopefully better response on the other line. And so that is the second question is, well, what are the alternate responses that could or should be put in place? And how do we know, how do we have confidence that they are equivalent or better? So that's the second question. The third question is related to what are some of those investments that we should make as a city, as a community, that aren't necessarily replacements for the police response, but are instead are things that contribute to public safety, the long-term, the systemic, the foundational elements that can improve safety within our communities. The fourth question is around, for OPD, the police department, the footprint that remains and that exists, assuming that some of the things we recognize can be replaced, recognizing that police will always have a place and there are key things that they should be doing. How do we ensure, what aspects of the organization, culture, processes should be enhanced to strengthen the relationship with the community? And then the fifth question is around recognizing that the county, Alameda County, is a critical partner. In terms of the public safety resources, whether it's probation, whether it's healthcare services, mental health support, the social services, what is it that we should be asking of the county or demanding of the county that they step up to contribute, partner, et cetera, in order to make our public safety system work that much better? And so wanted to describe that because I know that there have been some questions along that. I think one of the things that often is asked is, well, what does that mean to have a goal of a certain target of what we are shifting out of police into alternative responses. And to me, the response that I give is that we are sort of moving forward to reimagine without constraints, recognizing that there are a number of constraints that need to be layered on in terms of how we move forward. And for me, recognizing the significant increase in gun violence, the fact that a majority of the calls for service come from District 6 and District 7 and District 5, that we need to make sure that anything that we do does not compromise safety and actually allows us to enhance and move things forward. And so wanted to provide that sort of overview and address the question of, well, in terms of what the goal is, what I see as success is us to to not default to a police response where it's not warranted, so that we can increase the resources and police presence and activity where it is warranted, and enhancing the overall sort of relationship between police and community in that process. The second question that I wanted to address is related to homelessness and homeless encampments, because that has been the most, I would say, the biggest concern and issue that has been on Oaklanders' mind before COVID, and it continues to be a pressing one. As chair of the Life Enrichment Committee for the city, one of the things that I recognized early on is that we have not had a clear, consistent, well understood sort of strategy and policy for how we address homelessness. One of the things that we did in this past December, was that we teed up for the council a vote on what we call our PATH plan, permanent access to housing. And in that it clarified how we believe we can get from where we are to the state of zero homelessness, and addressing the fact that there are different levers in that transition, or that pathway. Prevention, first of all, preventing folks from becoming homeless. There's crisis response in the middle of sort of addressing those who are homeless, making sure that we stabilize them, support them where they are. There's transitional housing in terms of helping them get into a place where they are supported and sheltered and open to additional services that will allow them to then move on to long-term permanent housing. Because there are some folks that merely need sort of a solid foundation and access to, say, some job training. There are other folks that may not ever be able to get to the point where they are able to support themselves. And there are different solutions depending on where different folks are who have gone into homelessness and that we're helping out of homelessness. So that's the broad spectrum, and there's investments that we're making along the entire spectrum in order to help us get there. There's we can add a link and send out more information about the PATH plan. But within that, the next step was recognizing that we have an area within that spectrum where we don't have a lot of clarity and resources and support for those who are addressing it. And that is dealing with homeless encampments. With homeless encampments, the response has been, unfortunately, it has been one of waiting until the noise gets loud enough and then responding to a situation that has gotten out of control. And whether it's neighbors calling, whether it's fire that has broken out, whether there is some other sort of health hazard or issue. And so what I am bringing forward in partnership with city staff on actually the 20th, October 20th, is an encampment management policy. What it says is there are high sensitivity and lower sensitivity parts of the city. It recognizes that with 4,000 homeless folks in our city, we can't house them all immediately. But what we can do is, in acknowledging that these homeless encampments will exist, we can put some structure around how we support them, some guidance on where they should go versus not go. And in doing that, and also for those areas that they are allowed or that we will deprioritize relative to enforcement of the camping piece. There are certain conditions under which you have to exist. And so one of those is when it comes to fire safety, there has to be certain distance between shelters in those areas where in the deprioritized zones. Also, when it comes to aspects around if you're in an RV and you have your sort of your living there, you can't spill out and have your possessions sort of take over the sidewalk and everywhere else. Aspects around it in a given street, for a given street, only one side of the street can there be sort of encampments that are blocking the sidewalk. For the higher priority zones, the high sensitivity zones, in terms of where those are, where we're going to prioritize enforcement and moving folks out of those areas, we're talking about 50 feet away from a residence. We're talking about 100 feet away from a school, 150 feet away from a school, 50 feet away from waterways, because the pollution of the waterways has become an issue. And so there's more information. Hopefully someone's able to put the link to the encampment management policy on there. I want everyone to review that, provide your feedback. Do you think that we should have a clear policy that's concise and creating the clarity for our housed residents, our unhoused residents, our staff who are enforcing these or sort of implementing the policy? And if there's agreement there, then there's some conversation potentially around, well, what are the right boundary conditions? And there also is a map that exists that was created to identify and visually see where this could, where these zones are, the higher sensitivity and lower sensitivity zones. So those are, I guess, a couple of things that have been sort of preoccupying a lot of my time, in addition to the economic development piece, which is one that I think you guys, if you've been in any of my other sort of conversations, community conversations, you know, is a clear point that I focus on, because I do feel as though on the side of uplifting District 6 and East Oakland, we've got to focus on economic development. We've got to focus on job creation, wealth creation for this part of the city, as opposed to having all the activity downtown or uptown. And when I focus on economic development, I'm talking about inclusive economic development, where those who are here are benefiting from it as opposed to being displaced. And so I guess those are the three areas of focus that we've had. I wanted to give a little bit of an overview to that. And recognizing that we're 5 minutes over our time, I have a little bit of time to stay over, answer any questions. But I do want to just respect the fact that folks likely carved out an hour and a half and we've hit that mark. Maybe I'll turn to my team, Lena, Pam, Juan. Any questions that you see in the chats or hands raised that I should be focused on or paying attention to?
Not that I can. There was questions when it relates to the schools. I'm not sure if we're prepared. Middle schools opening and just what the status of the school, students going back to school looks like.
So I'm not the best to answer that. What I do know, given that that's OUSD scope, I know that the HEIA group had a meeting with the Skyline High School and their administration to talk about some issues of coordination. I'm assuming that that may have been recorded. I'm not sure if that's something that folks can, I see Mimi nodding. So I think that's something that there's a recording that folks can look at. I think in general.
Dan, is your hand raised, or do you just, is that a hand raised?
No, I think he said
okay,
no.
Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Not
sorry.
right now, but we can put it on the HEIA website, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you.
That works. That works. We can get more specific answers from our school board representative, Shanti Gonzalez, or the school district related to some of those specific school related questions.
Yes, I'm not seeing anything that was not covered.
Okay. If anyone has any last you comment, question briefly, raise your hand in the chat. Otherwise, I do want to just thank Captain Mendoza. I want to thank Director Ferguson. I want to thank Michael Hunt with Fire Department for your time being here, providing the insight that you provided. We will be going through the chat to see if there are any questions that need to be sort of answered or followed up on individually as well. And I want to thank you guys for your time, taking the time tonight to dig in, to get to know, ask your questions. We are open. You can always email my office at district6 @oaklandca.gov. I think many of you have my email address as well. And we look forward to continuing to serve and support. And there are a few action items that we will certainly be following up on based on this conversation as well. So,
And
please.
I'm staff of Councilmember Taylor's, Lena Hancock. I'm going to put my information in the chat as well as my cell phone, and I will be supporting our Hills neighbors. So please feel free to reach out to me by email or cell phone if you have to. No, cell phone with any questions, any follow-up, anytime you need anything that we can help you with. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for the time. Look forward to following up and continuing to support you guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care. Bye everyone. Good night.